What if your budget could do more than just balance summer? What if it could actively guide your decision? Hello everyone, my name is Colleen and today I will show you how to transform your budgeting processes using the flexibility of Odoo spreadsheets. Yesterday, you saw with my colleague how the new accounting budget analytic budget app can simplify budgeting. If you missed the tool, do not hesitate to rewatch it through this link. But today we'll take things a step further. Together, we will dive deep into your data to uncover powerful insights. Let's see how Odoo spreadsheet can make your budget work harder for you. But before jumping into Odoo, let's come back to our use case. Odoo is an Odoo partner that is selling 4 types of services: software implementation, support, hardware, as well as licenses and hosting. They are managing client projects in order to implement Odoo and provide the best follow-up possible to their clients. Today, they already have a good view of the project profitability per client, but they are missing a view of the profitability of each type of service. Moreover, they would like to better keep track of their costs by balancing all the revenues and the costs of a same service, as well as to compare the planned expense budget to the actual expenses. In addition, some clients are requesting a close commercial follow-up. They feel that they are losing money follow-up on this client and would like to balance the profitability of a client by including the hidden costs such as the client acquisition or the client follow-up. Here is how the dream report would look like. We first want to balance all the revenue and the cost linked to a service by calculating the service profitability. We then want to keep track of our costs by comparing the expense budget with the actual expenses linked to a type of service. We'll then make some computation to calculate the remaining budget, and we will then tackle the hidden costs linked to client follow-up. We'll then calculate all this data per quarter to be able to make comparisons and to see some trends. We'll, in addition, add some filters, such as the client filter, to go even deeper in our analysis. With everything in mind, let's now jump directly into Odoo. So here I am on my Odoo database. To make sure I'm keeping track of all the costs and the revenue linked to a project and a service, I firstly created 2 analytic plans. The project analytic plan, which is there by default, will take all the analytic accounts that are created automatically when I create a project linked to a sale order. Then the type of service analytic plan, in which I already created 1 analytic account per type of service. We can see that we already have some customer invoices on my database with the related analytic distribution linked to the project and the type of service. I also have some costs with vendor bills or timesheet entries. Moreover, to keep track of my cost, I already created some analytic budget. Actually, I created 1 analytic budget by quarter and by project to keep track of the cost. So for instance, for the first quarter 2024, for the project Clean City, I want to have a maximum cost of 3,500 for my software implementation service. So now that we have all the data we need inside Odoo, let's start building a report. So to come back to what we want, we say that we first want to balance all the revenues and the costs to have the profitability of each type of service. For that, we'll use the analytic report. So let's go in my reporting section and in my analytic report. Here I want to build the pivot view I want, so I will just remove all the dimensions and I want to group it by quarter and by type of service. Okay, perfect. I have what I need, so I will simply insert it in my spreadsheet and I will create a new spreadsheet report. I can confirm and give a name to my spreadsheet budget report. Okay, I have my first table, and the second thing I want is my budget report to have my plan expense budget. So let's go back to our database and to the accounting application, but this time I will go in my budget report. Here again, I will just remove all the dimensions to create the report I want, and I want again to group it by quarter and by type of service. Here, I only want to see my plan budget, so I will just remove the other measures to only give my budget measure. And I will insert it in the very same spreadsheet here. And I can confirm. Okay, perfect. So I have my two first tables, but now I need to only make one final table, so to gather all the information only at one place. So for that, I will start by creating a new sheet that I can call final report. We'll just place it at the beginning so that it's easier. And I need to gather all the information at the same place. Here, the first part will be to make sure that I'm always referring to the same analytic account. So for instance, I want to make sure that on the specific line, I'm always referring to the support type service or to the software implementation type of service. So you might be wondering, what is the link between this table? Actually, that's the ID of the analytic account. So we see that, for instance, the ID of the software implementation analytic account is the ID number 2, and for support is ID number 3. So these are the uniques, and with these, I will make sure that I'm always referring to the same analytic account. So I will just start in my final report by writing my ID, so 2, 3, 4, and 5. But it does not mean a lot in a report, so I will need to add the labels. So for that, I will simply copy the formula here or from the other table. It does not change anything, and I will paste it here. However, here I see that I'm referring to the analytic account number 4, so I will just change it by adding this one, and I can just enter and extend my formula. So I have the labels of my lines. Then I will need to add the columns. So as we saw, I want to have the profitability, I want to have the expense budget, the remaining budget, as well as, the actual expenses, the remaining budget, and the percentage remaining of this budget. Okay, so I did a little typo here, just a C. Okay, so I have my lines, I have my columns, but I need to say from which date I want to build this report. So for that, I will add just a new filter that will be a date filter. I can call it just date. And the time range will be from to, because my budgets are from one period to another period, and I want to make the comparison. And I will save, and I can just add here my starting period. That will be with the Odoo filter value function based on the date. So if I say here that I want to start from the 1st January 2024, it will appear here. And actually, the first part of the table here will be the starting period. So I can just add it. Okay, I have now all the information I need, so I can start adding my data in my table. So I will first add the profitability from my first pivot view. And actually here, I will simply copy the formula and paste it here. And I will make it dynamic, because of course it does not refer to the analytic account with the ID 4. So it's actually from B8 to B11. Okay, perfect. And I want to make the date dynamic, because I will not start always my report in January 2024. So it's simply this starting date. I will just lock it. And at once, everything is computed. Really easy. So I will then add my expense budget, and I will do the exact same process. So I will simply copy this formula and paste it here, change my here from B8 until B11. I will add my comma that I forgot, and I will change the starting date. Here, lock the number 6, and I'm good to go. Okay, perfect. I already built the first part of my report. So let's come back here. We now need the actual expenses to compare it with the expense budget. Here we see that we'll use the analytic report. And actually the analytic report, we already have it in our table because we inserted it for the profitability analysis. As I already have it in my spreadsheet, I do not need to reinsert it a second time. I can just take a look at my first pivot view, duplicate it, and Odoo will create a new sheet for me with pivot number 3. And actually, the only difference between my profitability report and my actual expense report is that here I only want to take the analytic items that are negative. So I do not need my revenues, I only need my cost. So I will add a new domain saying that I want all the amount that are under 0. So why that? Because in Odoo, when you have a cost, an analytic item is created with a negative value. I will confirm, and my table will be instantly adapted. I can now fill my final report. It will be really easy. I will simply copy this formula, paste it here, and change the number of the pivot view. So I will not use a pivot number 1, but a pivot number 3. And everything is computed. Just need to change. It was D6. And okay, perfect. I have everything I need. Now I need just to compute my remaining budget. And for that, that's simple computation. So I will simply say that the remaining budget is actually the expense budget plus the actual expenses, because this amount is negative. So it's the expense budget plus the actual expenses here, and everything is computed. Perfect. And then my percentage remaining is my remaining budget divided by my expense budget. So simply my remaining budget divided by my expense budget, and I want to have it as a percentage because it's more visual. Okay, so from this table, I can already see some trends. For instance, I see that the software implementation service seems to be quite profitable, and I have a lot of budget remaining. However, my licenses and hosting service is not profitable at all, and I'm way beyond budget. So I might want either to stop this service or to increase my prices. And I can just add a total line, and I will simply do some sums here to calculate my total profitability, expenses, and expense budget on this quarter. As simple as that. Here, I do not need these sheets anymore because I already use it. So I will simply delete it. My data will be kept in my spreadsheet, but it will be more clear, and I will not use these tables if I do not need it. Okay, so let's jump to the next part of the report, which is the client follow-up cost. Here I have a problem. You might be wondering how I will find this follow-up cost, because I do not timesheet for it. I do not bill, of course, my client for the call I made to acquire the client. So how can I find this data? Well, for my use case, I choose to use the CRM application, and more specifically, all the activities performed by my salespeople in my CRM. So I see, for instance, that Jenny made a call to Clean City, or that Roger wrote an email. So I will use these metrics to calculate this follow-up cost. However, here you might be wondering how I will know that a call lasts for 5 minutes or 30 minutes, or that Roger took 30 minutes to write an email or 2 minutes. Well, here I chose to make an assumption. Actually, in my activity types here, I added a new studio field with an average duration. So I made the assumption that an email takes in average to my employee 15 minutes to write, or that a call lasts in average 30 minutes. So let's start by importing my activities in my report. For that, I will go in Reporting, Activities, and I will use a pivot view. It's way more visual. And again, I will start building my table. So I want to have it by quarter, as it's my main metric. And here I want to see to who the activity was assigned and the type of activity here. So, and I can extend everything. Why do I want to have the employee that was assigned to the activity? Well, because Anita does not have maybe the same hourly cost or the same salary than Eli. So I want to have an accurate cost. If Anita has a higher salary than Eli, I want to reflect it in my report to have the more accurate report as possible. So I will first insert this in my same spreadsheet. And then I need as well, of course, the activity type with the duration. So for that, I will go back to my CRM, and I will go in activity type and simply insert the list in my spreadsheet report here. And lastly, as I told you, I want to have the hourly cost of the employee. So where can I find the hourly cost on the employees? Actually, that's in my employee application. And here I see that, for instance, in the HR settings, that Anita has an hourly cost of 60 euro. So I will simply, again, add the list of the employee to my spreadsheet. Okay, I now have everything I need into my spreadsheet report, so let's take a closer look at my employee list. Here you see that actually the hourly cost is missing. But no worries, I can just find it back with the technical name, so I do not need the work phone, so I will replace it by the early cost field. And I can simply extend my formula, and Odoo finds that Anita has an early cost of 60 euro. I can delete this column because I will not need it anymore, and if I need it, I can still have it back. Then for the activity types here, actually I have the same problem. I do not have the default duration. So again, I will replace the summary by the average duration field that I created with Studio, and I will extend, and I set an email takes 15 minutes to write in average, and I will delete all these columns. Okay, so now I have my pivot view for my activities, and here actually I have to map everything. So I have to map the type of activity, the hourly cost of the employee, and it can seem to be a heavy task because if I have to do it manually, I will have to always find in my other list what is the cost, what is the average duration, and so on. But Odoo makes it easier for you. We will first make a pivot dynamic by using the pivot function, and I will use the pivot number 4, which is my pivot view for my activities. With this, I have the exact same table, but I'm not able to modify it and add some data in it. So actually, the first thing I want to have is the employee hourly cost. So for that, I will take a look at my data for my pivot view with the activities, and I will add a new measure that will be added directly in this table. For that, I will add it, and I will add a calculated measure. I can call it employee hourly cost here. And what am I looking for? Actually, I want to look for the person who was assigned to the activity, and I want to retrieve the early cost of this person from the employee list. So I will just make my formula and magic Odoo retrieve all the information. But that's still not correct because one email takes 15 minutes to write and not 1 hour, so the cost here in the case of Anita will be 15 euro and not 60. So again, I can add simply, I'll do a little typo, I can add simply a new measure that will retrieve the activity duration. So again, it's a calculated measure. I can call it activity duration here. And I am looking in this table for the type of activity that was performed by my employee. And I want to retrieve the average duration. Here, okay, perfect. The last part of this table is just to compute everything together. So I want to say that it took 15 minutes, it has an hourly cost of 60 euro, but then performed only one email. So for that, I will start by hiding all the columns, so it will be more clear for you what Odoo is doing. I don't need it anymore. And I will add my last calculated measure that I will call total cost. So here again, Odoo adds 4 columns because I have 4 quarter, and my total cost will be simply my employee hourly cost times my activity duration times the number of activity I did. And everything is calculated. I do not have to calculate everything manually. And actually from this table, the only thing I need is the total here. So I simply copy this cell and paste it in my final report. So I will add a new line with the client follow-up cost here. And I will paste this formula. Actually, I need to have data, so I will again add my starting date here. And I need to modify this formula again, because I do not want always to start on January 2024. I will use the starting date here, and it will be updated with the cost for the first quarter. Now I want to calculate the profitability with the client follow-up cost, so I will say the total with the client follow-up cost here, and it will be simply be the total minus this cost. So here I can clearly see that on the first quarter I lost around 2,000 euro by acquiring new clients. Okay, so if I come back to my table here, I just added my client follow-up cost using the CRM activities, the employee hourly cost, and the activity duration. Now we need to compute this data per quarter to make comparisons. So here that's quite easy actually. I will just start by copying all the labels from the columns 3 times to have a comparison by quarter. And now I need to set the date. So actually the second quarter is simply the start date plus 3 months because the next quarter will start 3 months later. And I will copy this formula for the for the other columns here and here as well. Okay, and the last part, even easier, is simply to copy this and paste it 3 times, and Odoo automatically just adapt the formula. So if I check here, for instance, it's adapted with the third quarter. Okay, now that I have my table, which is done, I want to make it a bit more beautiful because for the moment it's not really great. So I will simply select my old table here and insert a table. I will like, of course, the purple color, so I will add the purple color. I have 2 header rows, a total row. I do not need to filter, and a first column. And that's already way better. Last thing is just to add my client filter here. So for that, I will simply create a new filter. This time will be a relation filter that I can call client related to the model contact. And here actually I have to do the field mapping. Why? Because I want to filter this table by a specific client. And actually it's the client that is set on the project. So for my budget report and my identity item, I will set my project and the customer on this project. Here, for the activities and the person who is assigned to, but the customer linked to this activity, and for the activity types and the employees, I do not need it and I can save it. So I can add here as well the Odoo filter value, but this time linked to the client. So let's test it. Let's take my client Paradisa. And I see here all the data are adapted for the client Paradisa. And I said, for instance, I had more than 1,000 euro of client follow-up cost for the first quarter, which is quite a lot. And it reduces my profitability. So now that I built my report, I would conclude this talk by saying that even Odoo's budget functionality is robust, it can be somewhat rigid when you need to include additional cost. And that's where Odoo Spreadsheet comes in, offering the opportunity to take your analysis further. Today, we demonstrated how this tool empowers you to create even more personalized decision in reporting. The choices we made are just examples, but with Odoo Spreadsheet, you can customize your reports to meet your unique needs. Thank you so much for your attention, and I'm now available to answer your question. You can submit through this QR code.
Hello.
Hello.
Thanks for your super interesting talk.
Thank you.
I'm actually waiting for some questions because I think it was very clear there are not many. So they're writing them down live. Can you list all items in a row? Like in your example, the names of the employees. Wait, because so I have to wait.
Seconds.
Okay, so can you list all items in a row? Like in your example, names of the employees in the pivot as it only shows the name once. Because maybe you can read it yourself.
Can you list all this in a row? Not sure I understand the question actually.
Maybe we can do another one. Do we have already good documentation about this? Because someone in the audience is planning on making one.
There are already good documentation on all the features of Odoo Spreadsheet, but for V18, it's still work in progress. So you can find some tools of my colleague that presented all the new features of Odoo Spreadsheet, and we'll update the documentation through time. But you already have some good videos or good example or even talks explaining the formulas.
Okay. Okay, clear. Is the spreadsheet updated with new data if you add more items in the Odoo
Okay,
database?
that's a good question. So actually, if you add some items that are related to these four types of service, the spreadsheet will be adapted in real time with the data. And of course, if you add more clients, it will also be adapted in real time. But if you want to add a new type of service, actually you will have to create the new type of service as an analytic account. And here simply add a line by saying, if, for instance, my new analytic account has the ID number 10, so I will add the ID number 10. Here I could add a line. Here say 10, and then just extend all my formulas, and it will be updated.
Can you insert your table in a dashboard?
Yeah, sure. So I will just delete that. Um, And from here, I can add it to the dashboard, choose the dashboard section I want, for instance, finance. I can create it and it's now added here. So it's updated and I have all my filters from here.
Okay, clear. Can you include analytical tag information?
Analytic?
Like,
Okay, analytic tag, it's a feature from V15 or 16, so we do not have the tags anymore in analytic. So now you will have to use the plans and the accounts. So it's if you do an upgrade to 18, it does not exist anymore. So you'll have to change a bit your analytic process.
I'm looking here. Two people say it was an amazing
Thank
presentation
you.
in the meantime. Maybe can we check the first one again? Can you create a budget in spreadsheet and then create a budget form in Odoo form from the spreadsheet?
No, that's the other way around. So actually, you cannot take this budget and add it in the analytic budget from the accounting application, but you can retrieve the budget from accounting to insert it in the spreadsheet.
Okay, I'm looking. Maybe a last one. Is it possible to have a sales order as an account line? I'm not.
Yeah, sure. So as we saw in my spreadsheet here, actually I added some tables from different models. So it was the model for the budget report analytic item, but we could have add like a new report with the sale order model and just add it in my final report by using as well the IDs of the analytic account.
I think this was it. Thank you.
Thank you.